Good to have you with us on this Wednesday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks for starting your day with us. We're going to begin this Wednesday morning again in Los Angeles, where protests continue in response to immigration raids in the city.
Mayor Karen Bass put in place a curfew last night for the part of downtown L.A. where we've seen these mostly peaceful protests over the last several days. A federal judge denied a request by California Governor Gavin Newsom to block the Trump administration's deployment of National Guard members and Marines to Los Angeles. White House border czar Tom Homan spoke yesterday with NBC Nightly News anchor Tom Llamas about the federal response to the protests, and he defended President Trump's actions.
Thank God President Trump did deploy the National Guard to help protect the buildings and help protect our officers, but it's chaos. I mean, a lot of the protesters are peaceful. Some of the protesters are not. Some of the protesters quickly become criminals when they burn down cars, they damage government property.
Protests against immigration and customs enforcement raids are now spreading throughout the country. There have been at least 24 rallies and demonstrations now coast to coast since Monday.
NBC News correspondent Camila Bernal joins us now from Los Angeles with the latest. Camila, good morning. So Mayor Bass says this curfew was put in place to try and stop the unrest in the city. We also heard from Governor Newsom, who has been, of course, critical of the Trump administration. Just what is the latest on the protests this morning?
Hey guys, good morning. So of course things are calm because we have a curfew in place for another 2 more hours. Huge law enforcement presence here in Los Angeles. Last night there were a number of arrests after that curfew went into effect. We are waiting for updated numbers from authorities on that. But Mayor Karen Bass really wanting to put a perspective around the protests and how large they actually are. LA is about 50 square miles. The curfew is only in effect for 1 square mile of the city. So it is relatively small in comparison to all of Los Angeles. We have seen, though, the number of arrests going up every single day. On Saturday, there were only 27 arrests. Then on Sunday, we had 40. Then on Monday, 114. And yesterday, there were 197 before the curfew went into effect. A lot of those because protesters went into the 101 freeway and authorities essentially telling them you're not going to go into the freeway. They're also warning people about vandalism, about looting, about the graffiti in downtown LA, and saying if you're doing that, you are not standing with the migrants. Of course, Governor Gavin Newsom pointing his finger at President Trump and blaming him for the escalation of a lot of these protests. Take a listen to more of what Gavin Newsom said last night.
This brazen abuse of power by a sitting president inflamed a combustible situation, putting our people, our officers, and even our National Guard at risk. He again chose escalation. He chose more force. He chose theatrics over public safety.
And so there are 2 things that Governor Newsom points at. One being the raids, the deportations, saying that people are in fear here in Los Angeles because of what the administration is doing. And the other is, of course, the National Guard, the Marines. He's also saying that that escalates the situation here in Los Angeles because you do have a lot of peaceful protesters. And then you have people who are angry and upset, not just about the immigration issue, but also about the fact that you're seeing that federal presence here in Los Angeles when a lot of people say it is not needed, guys.
Camila, we're also hearing from the White House border czar Tom Homan on these protests. He spoke with our Tom Llamas. He described the challenges he says the protests are presenting while conducting these immigration raids. What else are we learning?
Yeah, he's saying that these protests are making the raids and the ICE detentions more difficult and more dangerous. But what he's saying is that they're also going to continue, that these protests these deportations and raids have been going on every day and will continue because that is sort of the plan for the administration. Take a listen to another part of that interview with Tom Llamas.
Take a few moments, go downtown LA and look at the damage that's been done by these radical protesters. I mean, President Trump's saving his city. President Trump's doing what he should have done. Gavin Newsom could have responded right away and tried to quell this disturbance down there.
There's obviously a lot of people on the ground here that don't agree. The president has been saying that LA is on fire, and it is most certainly not on fire, guys.
So, Camila, this series of protests began last Friday. Is there a sense that they're growing larger with each day? I mean, what can we expect to see today on the streets of LA?
Yeah, they seem to be getting larger after those weekend protests, but they did get smaller yesterday. And it looks like they are getting smaller as more people get arrested for protesting in an unlawful way. There is a protest scheduled for this afternoon, so we'll have to wait and see how that develops. But I will point out that there's a lot of people that want this to be peaceful. Even last night, we ended with a vigil with interfaith leaders wanting to call for the stop of that violence and the focus to go back to the migrants, to the people that are getting deported as the central issue around everything that's happening here in LA.
All right, Camila Bernal in LA. Camila, thank you.
Well, President Trump defended his crackdown on protesters in LA during a speech before military families at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. He also later issued a warning to anyone planning to protest this weekend at a military parade that's happening Saturday in Washington, D.C.
What you're witnessing in California is a full-blown assault on peace, on public order, and on national sovereignty carried out by rioters bearing foreign flags with the aim of continuing a foreign invasion of our country. We're not going to let that happen. We're going to be celebrating big on Saturday. We're going to have a lot of, and if there's any protester who wants to come out, they will be met with very big force. By the way, this is people that hate our country. But they will be met with very heavy force.
The parade will mark the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army. It is also President Trump's 79th birthday.
NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us now with more. Monica's back with us after welcoming her beautiful baby boy, Arlo. Monica, welcome back. Great to see you. So at this time, between the deployment of Marines in L.A. and then this parade this weekend, when Mr. Trump's usage of the military is really in the spotlight, what ultimately did he want to convey? What was his message in this speech?
Well, it was particularly political for an event like the one that we saw yesterday at Fort Bragg, guys. And that was notable because even some of the service members were chiming in, were reacting, and were booing at times when the president took on familiar foes like the press, or when he was talking about what has been unfolding in Los Angeles and criticizing the officials there. So for him, that was something that was raising some eyebrows, given the fact that he did take this military moment to again become incredibly political. But that's because this is an issue that the White House feels he is winning on when it comes to immigration and when it comes to a strength of force and the military might that was on display there and that's going to be on display with this parade in Washington, D.C. They believe that that is what the voters who supported him put him in the White House to do. So this is something we're going to continue to see. And it was certainly an elevated rhetoric for an event that was taking place, again, at a military installation where typically you wouldn't veer into the political as much as he did yesterday, guys.
So, Monica, earlier in the day, the defense secretary testified on Capitol Hill at a hearing that was really focused on the defense budget. There were, no surprise, some tense moments, especially when he was questioned by California Congressman Pete Aguilar. Let's play some of that.
If you've got millions of illegals and you don't know where they're coming from, they're waving flags from foreign countries and assaulting police officers and law enforcement officers. That's the problem.
The laws of the United States.
President Trump has said he will protect our agents, and our Guard and Marines are proud to do it.
The law also says, Mr. Secretary, that the orders for these purposes shall be issued through governors of the states.
You and I both know that President Trump has all the authorities necessary, and thankfully he's willing to do it.
All right. So, Monica, one of the things the congressman also asked about was what was the cost of the deployments? Where's the money coming from? Did we get any answers to those questions?
Yeah, we know that it's going to last approximately 60 days, and the price tag on this operation in Los Angeles is north of $130 million. Now, that's going to be coming from the Pentagon budget, and that is something that they talked about in detail yesterday. But when we think about this concept that this could now take place in other cities, which is something that the president said in the Oval Office yesterday, you'd have to multiply that, and potentially we could be seeing that repeated again in other hotspots where more protests and more ICE operations take place.
Monica, let's talk about Saturday in D.C., this military parade. What are the details here? Do we know, for example, like how much it's going to cost taxpayers? Do we know if there are plans for protests?
There are definitely plans for protests, and as you saw there, the president said that they will be met with some kind of a response, so they are preparing for that. And in terms of what this will cost, experts estimate it's going to be around $45 million, and that accounts for things like $16 million just for road repairs, since you see those really heavy tanks that are going to be rolling down the street here in Washington. They believe that's going to be necessary. They're also going to need to pay for a lot of overtime for law enforcement that are going to be working the event and making sure that it stays safe. And then also they need to pay the soldiers meals where they're going to be staying, since it's also going to be attracting so many more resources. And it's really going to be a massive display, something that the president has been talking about wanting to do since his first term that he's now doing this upcoming weekend.
Monica, very quickly before we let you go, the Trump administration did rack up some legal wins yesterday in the federal appeals court, specifically when it comes to tariffs. What can you tell us?
This basically means that right now, while challenges play out in court, the tariffs can remain in place. This had been something that the administration wanted to see happen, and they have argued that as this legal process plays out, it could go all the way up to the Supreme Court. But for now, those tariffs remain until something potentially changes, which would be significant. Savannah and Joe.
All right, Monica Alba, thank you very much. Great to have you back.
A New Jersey congresswoman who was involved in a physical altercation with law enforcement officers outside an ICE facility last month has been indicted on federal charges stemming from that incident. The state's interim U.S. attorney announced a federal grand jury indicted Representative LaMonica McIver on 3 counts of forcibly impeding and interfering with law enforcement officers, adding, quote, "While people are free to express their views, they must not do so in a manner that endangers law enforcement." McIver and 2 other New Jersey Democrats were attempting to conduct an oversight visit at a facility in Newark last month in their capacity as legislators. At the same time, a protest was taking place. The indictment alleges that McIver slammed her forearm into an officer and pushed past a second agent. McIver called the legal proceedings a, quote, brazen attempt at political intimidation. She said she will plead not guilty.
We're going to stay with news out of New Jersey. Actually, the matchup for the state's governor race now set, teeing up one of the most closely watched elections of the year. NBC News projects that Democratic Congresswoman Mikey Sherrill and Republican Jack Ciattarelli have won their party's primaries. Sherrill, a former Navy helicopter, pitched herself as a Democrat willing to stand up to Trump. She defeated 5 other candidates to win her party's nomination. Now, Ciattarelli was endorsed by the president and beat 4 other Republicans. He cast himself as a Trump ally and the most capable of winning over the Democratic-leaning state in November.
This morning, federal agents are investigating a bomb threat that kept a Spirit Airlines flight and its passengers grounded. The FBI says the man suspected of making the threat was supposed to be on that flight, but missed it. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has the details.
It happened at Detroit Metropolitan Airport.
We have a situation, so we unfortunately are going to have to deboard this aircraft, and everybody's going to have to be rescreened.
Spirit Airlines Flight 2145 to Los Angeles on Thursday stopped and held on the runway after a caller phoned in a bomb threat.
If you cooperate with me, which I'd greatly appreciate if you could, I will get this done as quick as I can for you.
Everyone on board removed from the plane and screened on the runway by TSA dogs. But within just a few hours, the FBI said they had their suspect, 23-year-old John Charles Robinson, who allegedly admitted to calling in the threat after arriving too late for the flight and telling the Spirit Airlines rep on the phone there's going to be someone that's going to try to blow up that flight, 2145. When Robinson then showed up for the flight that he'd been rebooked on, he was arrested, now charged with use of a cell phone to threaten, maliciously convey a bomb threat, and phoning in false information. In a statement, the U.S. attorney in Detroit says no American wants to hear the words bomb and airplane in the same sentence. Making this kind of threat undermines our collective sense of security and wastes valuable law enforcement resources.
Our thanks to Tom Costello for that report. Robinson is now free on a $10,000 bond. He is due back in court later this month.
In Seattle, police are searching for masked thieves who allegedly broke into the home of hip-hop artist Macklemore. According to the police report, the rapper's nanny and 3 kids were home at the time. The nanny told police 2 men broke in, and then she made a daring run for help after being hit with bear spray. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has more.
Help, please! Chilling home surveillance video of a traumatized nanny pleading for help. Help, please! Seattle police saying she escaped a violent break-in at the home of hip-hop superstar Macklemore, where she was caring for his 3 children. A police report saying just after midnight Saturday, 2 men dressed in black face masks, gloves, and apparent tactical vests entered the gated multi-million-dollar home through, the nanny believes, an unlocked patio door, spraying her with bear mace and swearing at her, demanding jewels. She told police the robbers took watches, jewelry, and shoes and threw her on the ground, putting a boot on her ankle, then her neck, later pinning her against a wall, holding her mouth shut. She fought back, the report says, biting a robber's hand before running to neighbors' homes. Police say the men escaped. The children were found safe. Macklemore, whose real name is Ben Haggerty, was in the midst of a European tour scheduled to perform in Germany the next day. He has not responded to NBC News' request for comment. Former Seattle police chief and NBC News law enforcement analyst Carmen Best believes it was planned in advance.
They were intentional about how they were going to intimidate the victim, take her down. They know that there are likely to be valuables in the home.
Help, please!
An investigation ongoing and a famous family traumatized. Maggie Vespa, NBC News.
It is June, and the Atlantic hurricane season is now a week and a half old. Well, now a longtime meteorologist is going viral for his warning that federal budget cuts could hurt forecasting, endangering lives. NBC News correspondent Marissa Parra has more.
Miami's John Morales has been a voice of calm in the storm for years.
It's not turning. It's coming straight to us.
Now the NBC6 meteorologist is going viral for a different kind of forecast.
Remember that? That was about 6 years ago. Confidently, I went on TV and I told you, it's going to turn. You don't need to worry. It is going to turn. And I am here to tell you that I'm not sure I can do that this year.
His warning at the start of this year's hurricane season is sobering. He says that slashing federal funding within national climate circles will impact this year's weather forecast nationwide.
Because of the cuts, the gutting, the sledgehammer attack on science, we may be flying blind, and we may not exactly know how strong a hurricane is before it reaches the coastline.
Under the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, the Trump administration's cuts to NOAA and the National Weather Service making headlines this spring. According to NBC News reporting, several key sites have now reduced or suspended weather balloon launches critical for severe weather forecasting, while the National Weather Service now down almost 600 workers after layoffs and buyouts. The cuts prompting 5 former heads of the National Weather Service to write an open letter saying, quote, "Our worst nightmare is that weather forecast offices will be so understaffed there will be needless loss of life."
It is absolutely a matter of public safety. Weather in this nation should not be a political issue. We have to be able to identify it, forecast it, provide that information to the people so that they can take the necessary precautions as severe storms are developing.
Responding to concern, the National Weather Service tells NBC News they're now hiring more than 100 people to, quote, "stabilize operations across the country." But the Trump administration claims the agency will have enough resources, despite criticism otherwise.
We are fully staffed with forecasters and scientists. Under no circumstances am I going to let public safety or public forecasting be touched.
As NBC News meteorologist Chase Kane reported last week, a new bill recently introduced in Congress would protect Weather Service workers from future federal budget cuts and classify them as critical to public safety. Last October, Hurricane Milton exploded in size from a weak tropical storm to a deadly Cat 5 in just 24 hours. Morales then famously emotional over what the storm's rapid intensification would mean for human lives.
I apologize. This is just horrific.
Writing in an article at Am I Worried? You Bet I Am. Warning that erratic weather from climate change is on a collision course with a slashed forecasting industry. Marissa Parra, NBC News.
Well, let's stay with weather. We're going to get you a check of your morning news now forecast.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman has the latest. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, guys. And the good news today, we are looking at a quieter weather pattern. Still, though, watching heavy rain in the southern plains. And we have the potential for more flooding today. And that actually will last through Friday. So radar showing us that we have rain falling right now. Some of it is heavy, and that will be the case throughout this Wednesday and even Thursday into Friday. We do have flood alerts. That is in the green. And we do have flash flood warnings. 8 million people impacted by flood watches this morning and will last throughout today. So showers and storms along a stationary boundary. It's essentially a cold front that's parked in place, and we're going to see showers and storms erupting along this front. That's going to bring some heavy rainfall. It will also bring the chance for some gusty thunderstorms, especially in central Texas. So the best chance of these storms, we will be seeing some hail, also some damaging winds. Could see a tornado or two. Then tomorrow we'll see this front finally lifting to the north. Still, though, bringing that rain into Texas, Oklahoma, and the southern plains, into the southeast. It's going to lift as a warm front, and we're going to see that division between really warm air to the south and then cooler air to the north of that front. Cooler in quotes. It's nearly summer, but flood risk from San Antonio to Tulsa, Oklahoma. Severe weather threat today includes Houston, also San Antonio. That is a likely spot for seeing the gustier storms. We could see winds gusting up to 60 miles per hour, some hail, some tornadoes, and certainly seeing heavy rainfall. Also Shreveport, Waco, Brownsville, Del Rio could see some gustier thunderstorms too. Flash flood watch, that will be a big concern today and also Thursday and Friday. Where you see the pink, that is a moderate risk. So we're looking at the chance for flooding and also flash flooding. When I say flooding, that's river flooding. Flash flooding comes quicker and then it kind of moves out quicker. Rainfall, we're looking anywhere from 1, 2, 3, but could see isolated amounts up to 5 inches. Where you see those darker colors, we're looking at the reds, the oranges, the yellows. That's where we're looking at the heaviest amounts of rain. So places like Dallas, Shreveport, Alexandria, Austin, and also Houston. Back to you both.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. Much more.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.